Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our session. We're going to be talking, as you know, about innovation in diversity, and we're talking about today creating opportunities for your staff and for your organization when it comes to diversity. And the first thing that I'd like to do is introduce to you our panelists. Okay, why am I not? Help, tech support. I'm getting a red. My light is red as if maybe my batteries are dead. It is not advancing.
Just click the key.
I can do that. You want me to just do that on the laptop? But if you need this later, you might need assistance. Okay, so I'm Kay Chopard. I am the U.S. Ambassador for Women in Identity. That's a volunteer role. I've been with the organization almost from the very beginning that it started. And in my day job, I'm the Executive Director of the Kantara Initiative. But I am very excited, and I completely believe in the mission and the work of the Women in Identity. Rola?
Hello, everyone. My name is Rola Turk, and I work at RPC. That's my day job. I am part of the identity space, which is under the bigger cybersecurity umbrella. I've been there for a little more than 4 years now, and I am also a member of Women in Identity. I have a shirt on, proudly wear the shirt. I'm fairly new to Women in Identity, so it's been a little more than a month, I guess.
Oh, feels like forever.
Hi, I'm Kim Sutherland. I'm Vice President of Fraud and Identity for LexisNexis Risk Solutions. I've been with the company 16 years, been in the fraud and identity space forever, and I've kind of seen it evolve. Women in Identity, it came out of a core. We actually, women in identity have always kind of been limited in the beginning. And so we used to have a breakfast that was an unofficial breakfast at Gartner events. And we would all get together like before the actual event started. It wasn't even on the agenda. And the group kept growing. And then one time, they actually allowed us to be on the agenda as a lunch. And we were like, what, lunch? And then they asked me to be the keynote. And afterwards, all the women came up and they were like, we've got to keep talking to each other. We need each other. And then a group of women created Women in Identity. I served as an advisor initially. Then, as you all see in the agenda, it says U.S. board. I was on the U.S. board, and Kay and I were the U.S. board. And then we just recently have evolved, getting rid of the U.S. board separate from the U.K. board, and now we have a global board, and I'm on the global board.
Good morning. I'm Teresa Wu. I'm the VP of Innovations and Client Engagement at IDEMIA. Have been in the biometrics space for 20-something years, 20 years. Started joining as a volunteer for Women Identity, actually in 2019 at Identityverse. We have a table, Women Identity has a table, and Kay and Pam needed some help with getting that set up and man the table, so I just raised my hand and signed up and started my journey with Women Identity at Identityverse in 2019. And since then, I participate on be a speaker, amplify the voice of women in identity, and continue the growth journey. So,
excellent. Well, thank you. So you can see we're all volunteers, but we all really believe in this work, and we're excited to talk to you some more about the details today. So I just want to give you, if any of you are maybe not as familiar with the organization, the title is Women in Identity, but in large part because that's who got it going, but we're very much focused on diversity that extends well beyond gender, and you'll kind of see some of that come through. And as we talk today about opportunities, we're really going to be talking about it much more broadly, to include all kinds of diversity that I'm just not going to name right now, but someone else can go through that laundry list. So let me just take you through just some background so you have the context of the organization itself. It is a nonprofit. There is a nonprofit organization based in the UK. That's where the global board essentially works out of. There's also a nonprofit here in the US. which is designated as a 501c3 by the IRS under US law. And in the UK, they have other designation, right, that's appropriate there. That said, it's a very global organization. In fact, I'm supposed to have a call later today with our ambassadors and members from Singapore and Australia and New Zealand and that part of the world. So we're all over the place. Anyway, so we have been working. We started out with a mission and vision which looks similar to what it is now. And now that we've been in existence for 3+ years, we've actually revisited a lot of that because we've grown exponentially. I mean, Kim's comment about we were surprised we got asked to be at lunch. We were surprised that we have, you know, more than 2,000 members in a relatively short period of time, and that we speak at conferences like this. You heard Teresa say we were speaking in 2019, and we keep being asked to come to a lot of these, and I think it's because the message about diversity and inclusion really resonates for so many in this industry. So our vision, excuse me, is that digital identity solutions that are built for everyone are built by everyone. And so that encompasses obviously users of systems as well as those who create the solutions. And so we're really looking very broadly and not at one specific area. Our mission, we've updated in our strategic planning that we've done in the past year. We drive the digital identity industry to build solutions with diverse teams to promote universal access, which enables civic, social, and economic empowerment around the world. And I gave you some examples of how, in fact, we are global, and I really think that this mission statement tries to encompass the fact that that whole universal access, we're talking about a very broad spectrum. And in that process, we've also committed to what our values are as an organization, and I think it's helpful to understand those because I like to think that permeates everything that we do. So first, you see committed obviously to diversity and inclusion. Second, we really try to be a catalyst for change, and we do that in a variety of ways, which we'll talk about in a bit. We are very solution-oriented. In that sense, we're very action-oriented, and we are also really try to be a force for good. It is a team. As a team, we are also accountable for our actions, and that kind of really sets the tone and the culture, if you will, of the nonprofit itself.
So, Kay, you know,
yes.
one of the things I was thinking, I was going to change, wear something different. I think from now on, whenever we speak, we should wear FUBU clothes, for us, by us, because it's the same concept, right? It's trying to say that it's meant for, you know, it should come from the people who are actually using it. So that's going to be my new plug. I'm going to start wearing FUBU clothes.
I like it. So in the strategic planning that I told you about, here are our strategic goals. And I don't have them memorized, so I'm just going to kind of run through them with you, and you can read along with me. The first one, to increase diversity in the industry. We talked about that earlier, but through thought leadership around the issues of bias in homogeneous teams and the impact on product design. The second strategic goal is to increase awareness of the issues that digital identity exclusion causes for society and for individuals. And for some of you, I know you came to our session yesterday. We talked much more about our work in that area. I'll be able to talk here in a minute. To increase inclusivity by improving product design of digital identity solutions. To become the go-to organization to help with digital identity policy development in respect of inclusion. And we're already seeing that. We're having companies coming to us and say, help us write a better job description that appeals to a diverse potential audience and candidates, as an example. Another, number 5 there, to be seen as thought leaders on digital identity inclusion, making a positive change for society. And the 6th one, to be a sustainable, not-for-profit organization, raising funds through sponsorship. And for that, I just want to point out that we created the organization so that it is free to be a member. And we really wanted to not have that be a bar to participation. And I think that's one of the reasons that our membership has grown exponentially. It's also, and I will say this to all the men in the audience, thank you for coming. We have many men who are members already in Women in Identity. So we would really encourage that it is open to everyone. And so since it's free, I encourage you to take advantage of it. There are a lot of things that we offer to our members that I think is useful no matter who you are and what your situation, what your career has been like. But we also do rely on sponsorship. We do rely on companies to step up and who look at our goals and hopefully look at our values and our mission and see that as something they are willing to invest in. And we do a lot of things with our sponsors, and they have the opportunity to really work closely with us. And this is a listing. So, for example, if you're a sponsor, you get your name in lights, just like this, every time we do a presentation. And as I said to you, we are at lots and lots of conferences. But we also do a lot of things specifically with each and every one of these organizations. And we really appreciate what we are able to do and the things we're able to accomplish because organizations and companies like you see listed here have really stepped up and supported us. We volunteer our time, and that's a contribution that we make as individuals, but we're very grateful for our corporate sponsors. So I'm going to, I guess, leave this slide up for now with our list of names and how you contact us. And now what I'd like to do is, that's our background, but let me talk to our panelists, and I'd really like to get a chance to talk to them. So I'm going to get seated here too and hope I don't fall on the floor.
Yeah, good luck. I wish it was a lower chair.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. Okay, so the first question that I'd like to pose to our panelists is about the state of women in the identity industry in particular, right? And with that, I'd like to get your thoughts on what is the state of women in identity as an industry, but also what's the state in your organizations you've talked about where you're all located. So maybe we want to, since we started with introductions on this end, maybe we'll start on that end. We'll have Teresa go first.
All right, okay. So actually, thanks to, with the Women Identity, sort of help us raise the awareness in the organizations. So actually early this year, we run a report on every year, we look at how the percentage of women in management position in academia. So the tech report say 25, we are like 1/3. 36% of our employee populations are women, and 33% of our managers are women in academia across the globe. Certain regions varies. In the US, we are about in the 33%. And our goal is we have actually set corporate goals to increase that 3% year after year. So 3 points, not just 3% over the 33. It's 3 points, percentage point, year after year. So it's not parity. The goal is definitely reach for parity. But at least the fact that we actually run a report and we actually have an executive dashboard, track the women percentage. But we also did a report on the diversity on the ethnicity group as well. So those are all the things we are doing in the company. If you don't measure, you don't have a baseline, you can't really improve it. So having measuring the baseline is the number one, like step one, to drive that diversity at least in our organizations.
Great.
So from a state of women in identity, I think things are getting a lot better. So before I talk about my company, one of the reasons why we had to create an organization like this is that the same people at every conference would speak, right? I would speak at every conference. Pam Dingle would speak at every conference. You name a handful of women, we were the only ones that ever spoke at conferences. And they were like, what other women are out there? We're like, there's a ton of amazing women out there. What are you talking about? So being able to have a speaker bureau or a spot that people can come into and realize they can tap on any resource, and like we said, there's 2,000 plus members, probably all of them can speak. So that's a great thing now. You know, when you've been to sessions the last few days, you've seen men and women speaking, and that 5 years ago, you hardly ever see that. So I think things have gotten a lot better from that standpoint. From a leadership standpoint, definitely as well. There's a long way to go, however. At my company, fraud and identity, overall strategy, P&L ownership is 2 people for fraud and identity. Me for North America, and my counterpart who's based in Singapore for the rest of the world, which sounds kind of weird for the rest of the world. But about 75% of our revenue is North America, and then the rest is international. So as we continue to grow internationally, and I'm really proud that 50% of my employees are females. But I force that, right? I work hard to make sure I will keep a job open forever till I find diversity in employees. So I have a diverse set of employees from male, female, from ethnicities, from walks of life, from age, because you know, we all bring different things to identity from that standpoint. As I thought about that, I've got to talk to my counterpart over in Singapore, because every one of his employees are men. Did you realize that? I didn't realize that. I just realized that. So I think that but the other thing I wanted to point out is that identity roles are diverse in general. There are product managers, there's marketing, there's sales, there's strategy like what I do. And I think in each of those groups, we have different diversity numbers at our company, and some are doing better than others, but there is a clear focus in our company to have women in all roles, and there's even a key performance objective that all leaders have to ensure that you are paying attention to diversity, and that's something we've only had for 2 years, so it's really exciting to see that that is a key focus that our CEO and above, you know, and our board care about.
Absolutely. I was actually going to talk about identifiers as well, because as we're attending various sessions, you see women and you see people from diverse backgrounds in attendance, which is really great. And then sessions, you have, you know, female doing keynotes, who are keynote speakers, and then in other sessions, and it's not only certain type of sessions, but you see them speak at technical ones, and then diversity ones, and then, you know, other topics, which is really great to see. And this was not something we would have seen a couple years back, so it's awesome that we're definitely making progress. There's some additional work that we need to do, but we're getting there one step at a time. If we want to talk a little bit about RBC, I'm actually very proud to share that within identity, we were at 47% female within the team, and that's a team of 250 individuals. 47%, and that's not only certain type of roles, it's also, you know, leadership roles or technical roles or non-technical roles throughout the identity team. It dropped slightly during COVID, unfortunately, to 45, but we're definitely working, and it's an ongoing focus to get it back up to higher than 47. At RBC, we have, like, the bank is a huge supporter of diversity and inclusion. Hiring more women and more diverse talent is actually also one of our key performance indicators, so it's an ongoing conversation throughout the year, and we get sort of our performance is measured against that goal as well. So we are accountable to drive that on an ongoing basis. And our recruiters, we have a really good relationship with them that, in fact, I recently had a role that I needed to fill in my team, and the recruiter was great at making sure there's representation. When she sort of sent the resumes over to me to review, there was sort of representation of all different diverse backgrounds and skill sets, and regardless of whether female or male or age or ethnicity or background. And I made sure that I picked somebody who is, I looked at the team and saw where the gap is, and I made sure the leader is somebody who is not currently represented on the team to have that sort of additional diversity on the team. But I didn't just hire her for that. I hired her because she also had the skill set and she can do the job, and I completely believed in her. So that was important as well in making the decision, and I'm really glad about that.
Great. So I'll just add, I come from a very different organization. You heard me say my day job is executive director of the Kantara Initiative, which is a nonprofit, which has 2 full-time employees, and that's it. So by comparison, you know, it's hard to talk about what we're doing for hiring practices, is not really relevant. But I would like to say, and really Kim is the one who pointed this out to me, that said, 2 things. One, I've been there less than a year, And when I went to interview, when they talked to me about becoming the executive director, we had a very specific conversation about women in identity, because I'm at a lot of these, like Kim says, I've spoken at a lot of these. Next year, I'm not going to do this. Next year, we're going to get more people up here. Yeah, Melissa doesn't believe me. But anyway, the point of that is just that that was something that they wanted. They recognized that diversity was something that they needed in the nonprofit, whether it's in the membership, whether it's in the work, the services that we provide. They recognized that there was a need there. And so they actually said to me, because I said, I'm a volunteer, I don't get paid, but I do a lot of stuff, you know? And they were like very supportive. And as it turned out, I didn't realize this when I was first talking to them, they had sort of entered into like an MOU between the two nonprofits. And we're really trying to figure out, so what do we do now? How do we work together? And so what we've done, so that I began in July of last year. Well, so this year when we had a new board elections, we have all new people, what we did is we took diversity, equity, inclusion and made it a priority initiative. We have made it a strategic priority for the organization. And in doing that, the way that we've sort of partnered with Women in Identity is, as you probably have seen, and some of you who came yesterday, you saw that Women in Identity is doing research. We're looking at the human impact of exclusion. We're looking at consumers' experience, user experience, and we're looking at what happens when we don't meet our mission, right? And so people are not able to access. And what's the result of that? And next, we're going to look at economic impact. That research is very needed, and there's not a whole lot that's already there, and I'm excited for what Women in Identity is doing, and it's very focused on consumers. Well, Kantara is far more focused on credential service providers, on the corporations that are offering these services, who have these solutions, who are companies like your organizations, right? And so what we said is, well, we're not going to reinvent the wheel, so we don't need to do something focused on consumers because we're going to partner with Women in Identity. We're going to let them have that lead. Let's look at what we can do with corporations. And so we actually have a survey out in an attempt to gather data, to get a baseline to look at what are companies doing. Are you spending money on this? Are you changing your hiring practices? Have you done something different in your solutions that you're developing? Does your product team now look different than it did before? What are you doing? And I've talked to several folks who are like, well, we're just talking about it. And I was like, do the survey, because I guarantee you there are lots of companies trying to figure out what they should do first. And what we just want, it's anonymous completely. It is posted on Women in Identity's LinkedIn as well as Kantara's LinkedIn, so you can easily access it. We are not looking for people who have solved the issue. Not for nothing, no offense, you may think you have, but we suspect there's more work to be done. So I don't want people who've solved. I want you to say, we're thinking about this, we're thinking about hiring differently, all of that. Anyway, sorry for the shameless pitch there, but I think it's exciting that we sat down and looked at what are the different roles, and we're really trying to help make the business case. We're really trying to look at the marketplace, and I think for those of you in corporations, that'll be helpful. I also think that what Women in Identity is doing and their focus is also going to be hugely helpful. So I think the two together will be terrific, and you know, Women in Identity doesn't have a bunch of full-time employees either, so we're all in the same boat. But it's a good partnership, and I think it brings together the right perspectives. So, all right, I'll be quiet. So in case you're wondering, my questions are all here on my phone. That's why I keep looking at my phone. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I'm assuming that's at the board level?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay, so
we did.
that's interesting. Do you have resources that Kantara is willing to share with other nonprofits for how to implement that? Because we are doing that as well. And I'm with the nonprofit.
Okay.
So it's been a strategic priority.
Plug your nonprofit. Plug your nonprofit.
I'm with the Identity Theft Resource Center.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
So she deals with all the victims, yes.
I mean, our board is volunteer, and Kantara relies on the work of the volunteers, and I certainly have volunteers in the organization who are leading that strategic priority for the board. That's probably the first place to have you talk, and we can definitely talk you through that whole, to help other nonprofits. But we're just like, we rely on volunteers just like Women in Identity does. So that's the only resources that I would have to offer, but.
Yeah, okay, so I would just add, in order to make it, once it's making a strategic priority for the organization, it's either you have to come up with a vehicle to make it happen, either create a committee and then create a space where the volunteer need to participate and have goals and deliverables. I did the same thing with FIDO when I joined the FIDO Alliance, the board of FIDO Alliance last summer. The first thing when I got my onboarding with the FIDO's Alliance management team, I said, well, I think FIDO Alliance need to make it more clear diversity and inclusion is a priority for the organization, because when you talk about diversity, I only find two mention of diversity on the FIDO Alliance website. It's when you talk about diverse companies, that's it. So, so actually, through the board meeting, through different series of meetings, we come up with action plans on how to track, how to increase diversity in the association through actually just defining actions, like an action plan. So the first thing we did is looking at authenticate the conference plan. Sorry, shameless plug here too. Look at like intentionally putting actions and get the volunteer around it. But that's not, like Kay say, the resources. Okay, this is important. Then all volunteers need to work on that objectives.
Okay, great question. So let's go on to the next one. So my next question to you all is, to the panelists, what are the challenges that we are still facing? And I could give some examples, but I'm going to let you talk first. So maybe Kim, you could start this time.
Well, so when we go back to the state of women and identity, I literally did have people sit down with me at lunch yesterday, and they were like, it's so refreshing to see another female. I never see females when I'm working. So, I mean, I think just the numbers aren't there still. But I think that the other thing about what's needed still, I guess, or the actual users of identity solutions is a diverse population of people around the world. And that's really what we're working on, right? Our solutions ultimately are consumed by you and I as consumers or citizens or users of a site or a mobile app or whatever it is. And so I think that until we reflect that, we're going to miss out on so many different scenarios. And it's really interesting to hear how my daughter uses her phone completely differently than how I use my phone, or how my grandfather, who just turned 100, is totally different in his perspective on how he should protect his identity. He tries to fight the scammers. I'm like, please. I'm like, get off the phone with them, get off the phone. But social engineering is a total different mindset for him. He's like, I'm attacking them. So I think it's really important, though, for us to continue to think about the diversity of the end user, and we have a long way to go to get there.
Rola?
Yeah. I would add something slightly different, and I will go back to something you touched on a little bit, Kay, is the job descriptions. So when job postings are out there, just make sure that it's inclusive, the wording that's in there. We see a lot of female, usually, I mean, stats and whatnot that or surveys that we've read is that women usually do not apply to a certain role unless they meet more than 90% of whatever qualifications are required, right? So that sometimes, even if we're not only focusing on women, is just some job postings, they have a lot of, long hours, or we need someone who knows everything, has all the technical skills, and I don't know how many years of experience. Sometimes unconsciously, it pushes certain individuals away because it's a little intimidating when you read it, and it's like, you need all of these things, when in fact, you can actually teach the technical skills. What we really need on our teams are people who are sort of, have the empathy, have the good communication skills, the problem solving, because identity is evolving every day. So what you knew yesterday might not be relevant today, and you need to evolve as things change. So the technical skills is important, it's not as important as the other stuff as well. So just maybe wording it differently, just to be a little more inclusive and encourage other individuals to apply as well. The last thing I would say is also around inclusion is that it doesn't stop at hiring certain individuals, but it also, the journey keeps going even after they are part of the team. It's just making sure that they have the space to be their authentic self at work, and the psychological safety to speak up and express themselves. Because if you have diverse talent on your team, but they're not expressing their ideas and they're not bringing their opinions to the table and having the opportunity to discuss it, we're not really taking advantage of the diversity that we have. And we're not gonna see the richness of the culture and the innovation that we're looking for as well, right? So it's making sure that they are included and heard, and they have the opportunity to participate in every way they can.
Thank you. Teresa, are there some challenges that you still see?
Oh, plenty. We have plenty. So I will kind of circle back. I think the first challenge is definitely the bias, not just the, I don't want to say like us and them, it's ourselves. Like women, we have our own bias we need to break in the workplace. I think that we in the workplace, women need to support women. Oftentimes, some women have a seat at the table and felt like there's no issue with diversity, or there's no issue for women to go, I would say, climb the corporate ladder. I feel like there is still work to be done for women to be supportive of each other in the workplace, number one, and have the allyship. And then build that, that it's not us versus them, it's together. That if women do better in the organization, everybody does better in the organization. That's number one, the mindset we need to break.
But isn't that true for all employees? I mean, I don't want to have a heavy burden on my shoulder that I have to like pull every woman up behind me. I mean, I hate being the spokesperson for being a black person. I hate it. And I hate it for being a woman too, right? But I should care about all employees in general, right? So I just feel like don't overburden us females.
Well, I feel the same thing when I'm in the ex-com room and I don't want to be a token executive, right? I'm Asian and the only Asian VP female in the ex-com room. Is that I'm there because I'm the token female, right? I don't want to.
No, you're there because you're the best person for the job.
Yeah, exactly. So you thrive for the best. But what I see in my own career, my own growth is oftentimes the most friction point, the ones I have challenged the most working with are women, right? And oftentimes it's probably because we at some level we felt like we're competing with each other, and we shouldn't be. And I think that's one challenge I felt that when I created the Women in Academia network, it's about fostering that woman relationship. Don't see each other as the competition in the room, but as supporters, as I'm gonna have your back. You need help, I'm here for you. And so with other people, but I'm gonna say, I see you, and you can come to me. That's what I'm like, more the empathy level. And then the recruiting, I completely agree that women and men approaching job completely differently. I think we have different mindset in what we think ourselves qualified for or stretch ourselves for. So that's definitely a challenge, the diversity pipeline. And then once you do that, you have the onboarding pipeline as well. So.
And I would just add, so from my perspective, you heard I'm the executive director of Kantara, and I'm farther along in my career, and I've been running companies and nonprofits for decades now, sadly, because I'm that old. But the thing that I just would want to encourage you is I think there are still challenges that people like me who are in more like CEO roles face, in that we have two issues. One, it's easy to get a checklist. These are all the things that I'm going to do, and that's going to change diversity. But if all I'm doing is checking boxes, I'm not really making meaningful change, right? So I think we all have to be consciously aware that it takes more than just I change the job description, but I still hire all white people. That doesn't really get you where you need to be. And the other thing I would say, for any of you who are managers, I will admit that I did a lot of things that I thought were gonna work, and they didn't. So what you have to do is don't give up. So you're gonna try things, and they are not all going to be successful. I'll give you an example. I said to my staff, I want you to make sure that there's one woman or one person of color in every candidate pool that I look at. And so we did that. And did it increase our diversity? Absolutely not. And then, like Yale or somebody, did research about this. Turns out that if you only have one, so I had the token woman, I had the token African American in that candidate pool, their statistical chances of being hired are 0. Absolutely 0. If I put 2 women, if I put 2 people of color, if I do 2 combinations of that, their chances for getting hired go up like 60 times. I thought that I was doing the right thing, and all I was doing was having the token that, Teresa says, I don't want to be the token, and Kim says, I don't want to be the token. Okay, so I had to learn that the hard way. I am a woman, right? I still didn't get it right. So my point to you on that is just that if something doesn't work, if you're not increasing the diversity, and it is something that you want to do, it's challenging. There is no silver bullet. So you're not going to be able to just do one thing and all of a sudden it's going to change and there's going to be a culture change. Not happening. But what I would encourage you is it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort to do more than check boxes, to do more than raise awareness. You end up with a better organization. And now I can point you to all kinds of studies from McKinsey that say, and when you do that, your bottom line is going up. And it's going to go up far more than companies that don't have that diversity. So if nothing else, you can be motivated by the fact you can make more money. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because these are challenges. I see people trying, and I just want to encourage you. I've tried things that didn't work. Don't give up. Keep going. So, okay, next question.
Kay, I do say that it's for sure there's always this saying, well, but we won't qualify people for the job. And the qualified people, it's only this type of population. And that's what we need to fight back. It's like, maybe, but we need to continue to explore and continue to find. But qualification definitely have to come first. But because you don't want to feel that person to feel like they're being, just being used for that diversity token.
But that's why you need a feeder system, right? So working with interns, this summer I have 2 interns. One that is an MBA program that's an intern, and then one that just finished their undergrad. Both, give us new perspectives on things. Some I agree with, sometimes I don't agree with the perspective, but it's a new perspective. And then we work with students, right? We try to work with younger, high school age, and junior high, because you got to have a feeder system to be able to get people into things. So if we just wait until it's time to get somebody with all the qualifications, but we haven't tried to diversify the beginning pools, then we're not going to help a lot.
So let me ask another question. And we've talked a lot about things internal to organizations. I'd like to ask you all now, how can allies help? And that might be allies outside of your organization, and it might be allies inside your organization. But, there are clearly folks who are in our audience who we would call an ally, supportive of this. So how can they be helpful? I can't remember who started last. Maybe Rola's first.
So internal or external allies? I would start with internal ones, and I would say the allies so it's important for allies to use their leverage, their privilege to elevate others who are underrepresented or underestimated. So we've all been in conference rooms, lots of people around the table. You have people who are very vocal and very loud, and they're make sure everybody hears them. And you have individuals who are pretty quiet in the room. So it's really important to see the quiet ones as well, and sort of call out and say, I'd like to hear your opinion, or I'd like to, I'd like you to participate in the conversation. Or if you see something that is that's wrong, just sort of speak up, right? And help the individual to address it. For example, somebody's trying to say something, they get cut off, and no one is kind of listening to whatever their opinion or feedback is. Just sort of, you know, give them the space to say, I'd like to really hear what she was trying to say, or what her message is, right? So leverage your you know, whatever privilege that you have to elevate others as well. Also for external allies they have a great, I think allies don't really always know the power that they have if they really use, you know, their allyship. So just elevating others, just highlighting other people's, you know, achievements as well, internally or externally to the organization, because they are not usually always, you know, if we're looking at external allies specifically, people outside of your organization might not necessarily know you because they're not working with you or you know, on a day-to-day basis. So they don't know really what you're trying to achieve or what your accomplishments are. And this is where an external ally is a great sort of advocate and would speak on your behalf in that room, you know, if they see that there's something that you're accomplishing that needs to be highlighted to others outside of your organization, which at the end of the day, it expands your network, right?
I'll just say that mentorship is great. We have a formal mentorship program at LexisNexis Risk Solutions, and I think we have maybe like 300 women that are in the mentorship pool now. I mentor 4 women, and they mentor me because I learn as much from them as they learn from me. But being able to have a formalized program has really been helpful, and it gives you a chance to meet people in different business units, different roles and functions. So that's one internal approach, right? Just to have that support system internally. But I always tell all my employees to develop relationships outside of the company. You might have opportunities to grow much faster outside the company than within your own company, and gain new skills. So I think it's a balance, right? You know, fight all the battles and grow internally, but also join organizations that you can like elevate your skill sets, externally, where they might see something totally different than your company sees.
So for internal ally, I completely agree with mentorship. When we founded the Women in Identity Network, the first thing everybody asked was mentors. So we have to go find mentors. And given most of the executive, 2/3 of them, men, you want to have the mentorship program, like join the mentorship, be generous of your time. To mentor or be a sponsor, right? You can do both. You can be the ally, can be a sponsor, and can be a mentor. They're different, and definitely be intentional about that. Externally speaking, and internally speaking as well, I would say that if you intentionally look at opportunity to elevate high potential women employee in your organizations, find ways, be creative about it. So for example, you're gonna speak at a conference, you're gonna participate in a working group, designate someone as your alternate, designate someone to help you and collaborate on that presentation, on that project that's gonna be external, so that they have the opportunity to get exposed to other network. And because they feel intimidated because they don't have experience before, they don't feel like belong, right? And to do that, and be an ally is also be a good networker, introducer, help that person network into an event, take one under your wing that evening, introduce people that you know, and spend some time and get her more easing into the industry. That would be a great allyship. I was lucky early on in my career that I got someone like that in my career that helped me. And I get eased into the identity space much faster because I felt like I have someone that, you know, I wasn't like intruding, and he was literally going to booth, different vendor to say, hey, she worked with me, this is it, and then spend time looking at other people's solution. That 2 hours that from 20 years ago set me up for where I am today.
And you said he.
Yes,
and all of my mentors have actually been men. So men have a role in being allies, mentors, those kind of things. It's awesome when I get to have females. And I will tell you that I did when we do our mentor rotations every year, I said I wanted to have women of color to be my mentees this time because we have a big enough group, and I think it helps them to be able to see somebody that looks like them to help too. So I've been very specific right now where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna pick these 8 women of color and I'm gonna help them. But men are important in this whole process.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Rather than ask the panelists, we only have a few minutes. I wanted to see, I appreciate the question earlier, but are there others who might have questions for the panel before we close out? Yes, over here, Melissa.
Something that you alluded to earlier in the panel, Kim, was kind of the idea that the onus is often on women or the people of color to do this type of work, and that can be tiring, to be honest. Do you have any advice for, folks who do this type of diversity work and combating, burnout or things of that nature?
I only take on what I'm able to do. I am very realistic with myself. My team will tell me that I don't sleep enough, but it's okay. I don't need a lot of sleep. But I am okay with saying I can't do anymore. And everybody has to understand that, right? And it used to be I would avoid being on a panel at work. So 6 years ago, if we had an internal panel, I would get calls from people in Paris and all over the place, and they're the only black female that's in that country or whatever. And they were like, it was just so nice to see. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. And so I would just hide. But now I'm okay with just saying, nice to meet you. No, I can't take on a new mentee or that kind of thing.
Can I offer another suggestion? Again, you can tell that I am more in a leadership role. One of the things that I think, and I don't know if you can encourage your organization to do this, is that if you're going to ask somebody to take that on, that ought to be in their performance evaluation. They ought to get evaluated for that. You know what else? They ought to get paid for it. This should not be something that I do because somehow, because I'm a minority, I'm going to give extra hours that you're not going to pay me for to do something outside my job description. Spoken like a boss with an opinion, huh? But really, I think it's important that we acknowledge that this is substantively doing something for your organization. And it can't just be added, other duties as described, and you don't get anything for that. And I think that happens a lot, and it shows up more, unfortunately, for women and minorities. I think it also shows up for people who are disabled, and even LGBTQ people. They end up being asked, it's like suddenly it's our problem. You know what? Not for nothing. Not sure it's my problem here. So why do I have to try to fix it? So if you're going to ask me to help with that, then pay me for it and evaluate me for it and give me the credit that's really due and the ability to do it. So.
The other thing I would say is that employee resource groups are amazing. And so it starts to open up the pool of people and more support networks. And then those are usually funded by the company, and it gives a more structured approach versus it, just sitting on the shoulders of a couple of people. So that's been also really helpful, and I think that we have, it's amazing the types of ERGs that start popping up, and you're like, okay, there's a group for that too. But everybody needs support, and people need to be around others who are going through their experience.
Yes, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Going back to something that Rola was talking about, and certainly has been echoed throughout the conference, the application rates, especially in terms of applying to jobs, how much, with women natively applying less, how much does imposter syndrome figure into this, and what do we do about it? It's not unlike the conversation we had where, I think it was in Alex's talk yesterday from Microsoft, where it could have been one of the other ones, where they were, you're talking about STEM adoption in schools, and by this age or that age, especially in neighborhoods that are more susceptible to these sorts of problems. Young women dropping out way before because math isn't for girls, and it's a problem we needed to fix 20 years ago. What do we do about it now? How do we adjudicate for that now as it exists?
I actually have a lot to say on that. So I'll start with the first part, which is the imposter syndrome. And I'm actually reading a book where it was mentioned that women usually, when we talk about imposter syndrome, we talk about the woman and how can we help her to get over that. But another way to look at it is that you don't need to fix the woman. You might need to fix the environment she's actually in, because the environment is the one that's sort of judging her for whatever reason and making her feel that she's not competent enough, when in fact she absolutely is in that role because she is the best person for the job, and she shouldn't feel that way. So it's just sort of cultivating that culture in the organizations, whatever organization and workforce that she is in, to sort of have that sort of, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay if you don't know everything. You're not expected to know everything, you know? That's why you have teams, and that's why you have sort of team members to leverage their expertise as well, and they bring something to the table too. The second part of your question, and this is very important to me because I have a little girl, and I make sure, you too, I make sure that I share. For example, years ago, like if you talk a couple years back, if I was to travel and my kids are back home, I would have said, no, I need to be there with them, you know, they go to school and this and that. But this time, no, I said, you know what, this is a great opportunity because my kids are looking at me, you know, they ask me questions sometimes. My son wanted to get a valedictorian award at the end of the year, and then at the beginning of the year, he sat with me and he said, I see you know, you put goals and you make sure that you work towards your goal, and then we talk about it when you achieve it. So can you walk me through your journey and how you get there? And he actually got the valedictorian at the end of the year, so I was very happy. Cried a little bit, just a little bit. So my daughter is now 7, and she looks up to me, and she's very, so the impact that you have and the opportunity we have to sort of empower them and make sure they don't feel like there's anything that they can't do. I got her in soccer. You know, it's like, you can do soccer, he can do soccer, you can do soccer too. So she's right in there in the sports as well. And then we see STEM and STEAM and all that stuff, right? So, you know, getting her into coding and robotics and all that kind of stuff, because it's not only for the boys, it's also for the girls. And it kind of builds that culture from when they are kids. And then as they get to a certain age, they will not accept anyone telling them that you can't do it, and I'm not gonna hire you, I'm gonna hire someone else because, you know, he can do it and you can't, right? So just building that in them from early ages as well.
I know we're out of time, but I just want to say that people need to also focus on their authentic self. Sometimes you are not good at certain things, right? Yeah. Just be able to accept that. It's okay, you know, and so being able to show people there's value in what you are good at. So I love building jobs around people's skills, right? So I'm like, okay, you really suck at this, but you are great at this part. So let's build a job around that piece. And I think that's really important. I have daughters. I have 3 daughters, but all are adults now. My youngest daughter is 21, 22. One of the daughters, so that way I don't call people out, she loves science. 2 were science majors, and she was terrible at it. And I kept trying to get her to change her major, but she loved it so much. And it was so painful to watch somebody who loved something and was terrible at it. And she stuck with it though, because I kept trying to get her to change her major. Now, her GPA sucks, right? But she finished what she loved. And so then I had to find other areas of her that she can shine in, because the GPA doesn't shine. So I think it's important for people to build, you know, so like when I created my role at LexisNexis, I knew that I came from finishing a doctoral program in public policy. Everybody was coming at identity from a technical standpoint. I came at it from a policy standpoint, and I lead the fraud and identity area now, right? So find what you're good at and then build things around it.
And on that note, I'm pretty sure we're over time. I'm getting the Chopard took over here. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate your input, and we hope you'll join and get your company to be a sponsor. Thank you.